When is the last time that your faith has been tested? And what I mean is that your faith in God was going to cost you something. Maybe to one extreme, it was your life. If you were to come out for the Lord or do something for the Lord, it could cost you your life or your family's life. Or maybe you've been tested in a way that can cost you your job, your status, your position, your favorability. When's the last time that your faith has been tested? And when's the last time you have passed the test? You're faced with a stance for the Lord. God has asked you to do something. God has put something on your heart to obey Him. And you have to decide whether you're going to do it or not and bear the consequences. It could cost you greatly. When's the last time you've been tested? When's the last time you have passed the test of faith that God has given you? In our study today, we're going to meet two prophets in which their faith has been tested. Either one has passed or both of them have passed. Stay tuned and find out whether Elijah and Obadiah has passed the test given to them by the Lord. Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. John W. Wilson III, bringing you the Sunday School lesson for Sunday, March 28th, 2021. Thank you for joining me today. Our passage comes from 1 Kings, the 18th chapter, verses 5 through 18. The title of the lesson is called Prophet of Courage. Prophet of Courage. Before we get into the lesson, I want to remind you to help me out. Many of you have done this in the past, and then recently the subscribership has just grown, especially on YouTube. And I want to thank you in advance. So I need you to keep on sharing, keep on liking, and keep on subscribing, because I would like for this lesson to reach as many people as possible. And of course, I need your help. So let's get right into our lesson. Our lesson is dealing with the 1 Kings, the 18th chapter. Let's do a little bit of background, what's going on. The setting is around the 8th century BC. It's about 850 BC, the exact date around that time. Israel, the northern kingdom, that's the setting. Samaria is the capital. Everything is happening right around Samaria. The northern kingdom has experienced wicked king after wicked king after wicked king. And as we come to chapter 17, really at the end of 16, beginning of 17, we're introduced into the most wicked king the northern kingdom has ever had. It's Ahab. It says right here, Ahab, it says there's never been a king more wicked before him, and there's never been a king more wicked after him. And so what he did was he married a pagan woman, and that woman was named Jezebel. Jezebel introduced him into the false god of Baal, and then they both together began to worship Baal. Baal was a nature god, rain, sun, fertility, anything dealing with nature. That's who they worship. You got to remember, back then everything was agricultural, so this god fits their agricultural lifestyle. So they worship nature. And so it says right here, Ahab, at the end of 16, erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he built in Samaria. So he has an altar, and he had a place of worship, and he built that altar in the house of Baal in Samaria. And Ahab did more. It says right here, did more to provoke the Lord, the God of Israel, to anger than all the kings of Israel were before him, and those were behind him. Okay? Those who would ever live. Okay? So we got that. And so God sends Elijah to speak to him, to tell him what he's going to do, to tell him of the consequences of building this altar to worship Baal, to leading the people of Israel astray to listen to his wife Jezebel. Shouldn't have married in the first place. She was a pagan, a false worshiper. And so he's really taking Israel farther down the road, and God does not like that. So Elijah the Tishbite comes to him. He says, as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there shall be neither dew or rain, dew in the morning or rain these years, except by my word. So Elijah tells him that it's going to stop raining. There will be no dew. There will be no rain. It will be a tremendous drought, except by my word, meaning that my word is going to cause it, and my word is the only word that can end it. And that's what happened there. So immediately afterwards, the Lord word came to him. He said, depart here, turn eastward, and hide yourself by the brook. Okay? So he went to a brook, hid himself miles away, and he stayed there for 3.5 years. During that time, he spent maybe about 6 months or so at this brook. This brook dried up. And then you know that he meets the widow. The widow has a little bit of oil left, gives it to him, and he performs a miracle by letting the oil keep reproducing. And then he heals or raises the widow's son from the death. And that's how we get to 18. 3.5 years have passed. And it says here, after many days, the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, go, show yourself to Ahab. So God is commissioning Elijah to go to Ahab. He's going to tell him that the drought is over. He says, tell him I will send rain upon the earth. So Elijah went to show himself to Ahab. One thing I want to remind you that is during those 3.5 years, they suffered a tremendous drought. And during that drought, Elijah was the most wanted man in northern Israel, the most wanted man in the northern kingdom. There was a bounty for his life. And so, but he hid from them. I believe that God supernaturally hid Elijah from Ahab and from the enemy, so people would not either recognize him or they just could not find him. And so that's what I think. I believe that he just could not find him. So 3.5 years, it was a manhunt for him. They could not find him. Ahab did everything that he could to find him, but could not find him. So Elijah is going to tell him that he's going to send rain. And he says right now, so Elijah went forth to show himself to Ahab. He hadn't got there yet. Now the famine was severe in Samaria. Samaria is the capital of the northern kingdom. And Ahab called Obadiah. This is Obadiah. It's not the prophet Obadiah that wrote the book of Obadiah, because that was written around 583 BC. This setting here is around 850 BC. Obadiah was a very common name. So it's not the prophet that wrote the book of Obadiah. This is a different individual. And prophet nonetheless, a different individual. Both of them would be considered prophets in the eyes of the Lord, very minor prophets by what we have written of them. So Ahab called Obadiah, who was over the household. Now Obadiah is a believer in God. He is a faithful believer in God, and yet he was over the household of Ahab, meaning that he was a governor, meaning that he managed the day-to-day of Ahab's business. He took care of him. He ran things. He had a very lofty position. And it says right here, over his household. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. He was a believer. He reverenced the Lord. He was obedient to the Lord. When you see fear, not only do they have an awe and respect for God, they obey God. They walk righteously. So he was a righteous man that was the governor of northern Israel that worked under Ahab, meaning that Ahab had to have a certain amount of trust and respect, a tremendous amount of trust and respect for Obadiah. It says, and when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50s in a cave and fed them with bread and water. Let's talk about what we know about Obadiah right now, okay? Obadiah, to be in a governor's position, chief of staff, running things, had to be an honorable man. A lot of you may be faced with the same situation that he is in. Your boss is evil. the company you work for may be evil, but yet you are working there. And what Obadiah tells us is that even though we may work for an evil king or evil company, or our boss is evil, it's no excuse to do sloppy work. It's no excuse to do your job well. Now, you do your job as well as you can do it, but you don't cross over ethical or moral lines. But you have an obligation to go to work on time, to be on work at time, to not take excessive lunches, to not steal on the job. You have an obligation to do a good job, because guess what? God has placed you there to be a shining light. God has placed you there to do a good work, as we will find out here for Obadiah. So Obadiah is a righteous man. He said he feared the Lord greatly. He loved the Lord more than his job, more than the king, more than anything else. God, loving God, fearing God was the most important thing to Obadiah. And a lot of times on your job, I just want to say this, is that do the right thing. Let your light shine on your job. You don't have to go around telling everybody what you believe and have the Bible laying out and all that kind of stuff, but let it be known by the work that you do, by what comes out of your mouth. No gossip, no cuss words, things of that nature. Do your job, treat people equity and fairly, have great leadership, and guess what? God will be pleased. But there's nothing wrong being in a work, having a evil boss, and you work there, or it's nothing wrong with that. Or even an evil administration. If you're in politics, you're there to do the right thing. Do the right thing. God will put you in a position to do even greater things. And look what happened right here. He's governor. Jezebel hates God of Israel. So she decides that she's going to silence all the prophets. So she takes a slew of them, the majority of the prophets of Israel, and she has them killed. Okay, Obadiah knows this, sees this coming. He fears the Lord. Look what he does. God put him in that position, because if he wasn't a governor, he could not do what he did. God has you in a position because he doesn't want a non-believer or evil person there, because an evil person will not do what he wants to be done or needs to be done. He puts a godly man here, a believer here, a man that fears God, and look what he does. Obadiah cuts off the prophets of the Lord, meaning she kills them, tries to assassinate every last one of them. But Obadiah, at his risk of his own life, he is a prophet of courage. He did not have to do this, but he feared the Lord, loved the Lord so much, God compelled him to do it, and he obeyed. Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50s in a cave. Not only did he hide them, which was a risk to his life and his family's life, he fed them with bread and water, meaning that for that period of the drought, however long they were in those caves, he would give them bread and water every day. He would make sure they had food and water to drink. He took care of them. He nourished them at the risk of his own life. That is a prophet of courage. And I'm asking you, when's the last time your faith has been tested? When's the last time you put something on the line in obedience to God? Something that would maybe cost you your job, or something may cost you, I said earlier, your status, your fame, your fortune, something dear to you. Obadiah put his life on the line so the word of God could continue. And he passed the test right here. When's the last time you passed a test? When's the last time you had a test? Think about it. Think about it. Look what he says right here. And Ahab said to Obadiah, he trusts him. You know, an evil person doesn't want another evil person working for him. An evil king wants a trustworthy individual working for him. And here, Ahab trusts Obadiah. He trusts him. It reminds me of Daniel working for Nebuchadnezzar, an evil king, but God put a righteous man second in the command so that the God's work can get done, and it's going to get done here. Ahab said to Obadiah, go through the land to all the springs of water and to all the valleys. Perhaps we may find grass and save the horses and mules alive, and not lose some of the animals. There was water in this drought. It just wasn't enough, and it was drying up from every spot. It was some water. The king obviously had water. He was able to get some. Some people obviously had some water. They didn't have enough, but things were drying up, that the animals, they couldn't have enough water to get animals. The animals can't find water on their own, so they're going to look for water for the animals so they won't have to slaughter them. That's how bad it was. Vegetation was not growing. There was nothing there for them to eat. No water or anything. So Ahab says, Obadiah, I need you to go out to the lands and look for some water so we won't have to slaughter these animals. It says, look, so they divided the land between them to pass through. Obadiah says, I will go this way. Ahab says, I will go this way. And he says, Obadiah, you go that way. And so the king obviously took men with him. It seems as though Obadiah went in a direction by himself. That's what it says right here. By himself. Okay? So he's looking. God is orchestrating this. Just remember, he's orchestrating this. He's going to arrange a meeting between Ahab and Elijah. Verse 7. As Obadiah was on his way, behold, Elijah met him. So as he's traveling looking for this land, Elijah appears out of nowhere and met him. And Obadiah recognized him and fell on his face and said, is it you, my Lord? You got to remember, Elijah was a hero. He was a hero of the day. He had went against the king. He had shut down everything. He had tremendous respect of the people. The people had heard all that he had done. And so what Obadiah does, he sees him, recognizes him, and falls on his face, not to worship, but in honor and reverence of him, like he was a bishop or something like that. He said, is it you, my Lord, Elijah? Just making sure it was him. And he answered, it is I. Go tell your Lord, behold, Elijah is here. So the first thing he says, Elijah says, go tell King Ahab, Obadiah, that I am here, that so they can meet together, because he knows he's looking for him, and he's arranging a meeting. And so Obadiah is fearful of that request. He's fearful. This is where he shows lack of courage. And sometimes in our Christian walk, there's some things that we will show courage for, and then there's some things when the stakes are a little higher, unfortunately, we'll back down, and our fear will take over, and fear is beginning to take over Obadiah. And he said, have I sinned that you would give your servant in the hand of Ahab to kill me? He says, if I go to him and say you're here, he's going to find out, and I come back and you're not here, Ahab is a crazy man. He's an evil man. He will have no problem killing me. That's how bad he wants you. So have I sinned? Have I done something wrong against you so that you're going to send me to my death at the hand of Ahab? Because when I come back, you're not going to be here. He says, as the Lord your God lives, there is no nation or kingdom where my Lord has not sent to seek you. And when they would say he is not here, this is what Obadiah is saying, he would take an oath of the kingdom or nation that they had not found you. He says, look, he has looked for you everywhere. That nation, this place, that place. He has looked for you. And when the people come back and say they haven't found you, he makes them tell an oath that they have not seen you. That's how bad it is. That's how bad he wants you. It says, and now you say, go tell the Lord, behold, Elijah is here. And as soon as I've gone, the Spirit of the Lord will carry you. He had heard rumors how the Lord takes Elijah here and there. He appears here and there, and he thinks he's going to do the same thing. He says, the Spirit of the Lord will carry you, I know not where. And so when I come and tell Ahab that he cannot find you, he will kill me. So in essence, he's saying that if I go to him and tell him that you're here, God's going to move you somewhere because you've been moving spot to spot like the people has been saying, or rumors have been saying. And when he comes here and travels that distance, you're not here, I'm going to be put to death. He says, although I am your servant, have feared the Lord from my youth. He said, I am your servant, and I have feared the Lord from my youth. It says, I, your servant, have feared the Lord from my youth. Has it not been told, my Lord, what I did when Jezebel killed the prophets of the Lord, how I hid 100 of the Lord's prophets by 50s in a cave and fed them with bread and water? He said, I've done good things. I can continue to do good things. I have served the Lord. I have done this for the Lord. And now you're telling me to go and tell the Lord, behold, Elijah here, and he will kill me? He said, that doesn't make sense to me. I have done good things. I've been courageous. I am a faithful servant. I have feared the Lord from my youth, and now you're telling me to go in front of Ahab and he's going to kill me. I just don't want to go out that way. I don't want to die that way. I don't think that's appropriate. And Elijah said, as the Lord of hosts lives, behold, whom I stand, I will surely show myself to him today. Elijah reassures him that I am not going anywhere. If you go get him, I'm going to be right here when you come back. And said, as the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, I'm giving you my word, I will surely show myself to him today. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. So Elijah kept his word. Ahab goes to meet him. Verse 17. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, is it you, the troubler of Israel? See, the first thing he does, Ahab, he's evil. His mind is demented. He blames Elijah for the trouble of Israel, calls him a troublemaker. You see, what's going to happen as a Christian, you have to understand. The world, when things go wrong, especially in the end times, they're going to blame the Christian. Nero burned down the city of Rome and blamed the Christians to make them look bad. Christians, you got to be ready to expect it. You guys, Christians, us, you and me, going to get blamed for everything. When things start going bad, they're going to blame the Christian. They're going to blame us for doing something. So expect that, whether it makes sense or not. And Ahab is calling him a troubler of Israel. And he answered, this is what Elijah said, I have not troubled Israel, but you have, you and your father's house, because you have abandoned the commandments of the Lord and followed Baal. No, your worship of false idols, your worship of Baal has brought this on the people of Israel. And one thing you have to understand here, remember that he was trying to get water for the horses, and the drought affected everybody. And so even when you have an evil king, the just will suffer too. Just like when you have a righteous king, the unjust will be blessed also. So here, that drought affected everybody. Animals, righteous, unrighteous, men, women, and children. It affected everybody. And it was because of Ahab and his evilness. He brought Baal into the picture, into Israel, built temples, places of worship, erected altars, and worshiped a false god. And so since Baal was a nature god, God sent a drought to let them know that I am greater than your nature god. I am the one that controls what grows and what doesn't grow, whether you have water or do not have water. I am the one that supplies all your needs, not Baal. That's what he was trying, the message that he was sending them. And so Ahab has caused this. He's a real troublemaker. He says, now therefore, I'm just going to read 19. Now therefore, send and gather all Israel to me at Mount Carmel, and the 450 prophets of Baal, and the 400 prophets of Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table. Look what has happened. You got 450 prophets of Baal, and you got 400 prophets of Asherah, all under the leadership of Ahab. That's how bad things have gotten there. And so right now you're going to have a showdown on which God is better than the one that God. Of course, the God of Israel is going to reign supreme. What have we learned here so far? What have we learned? There will be times where God will ask you to do things you may not want to do. That you're going to feel uncomfortable, you're going to feel threatened by, you're going to feel insecure about, something that doesn't make sense, something that may cost you something. And so the question is, can you have the courage to do that? Can you have the courage to be obedient? Now, in this story here, we have Obadiah, which is a courageous person, but Elijah has even greater courage because he is willing to meet Ahab face to face after 3.5 years. He goes to him first to give him the bad news, and he goes to him last to tell him the rain's going to come, And then he also he also in the conversation calls him the king a troublemaker. And then he challenged the king to who has the best God, who has the stronger God. And all of the time, he's not fearful. Now, he was fearful of Jezebel, but God comforted him that. He got over that, and look how much stronger he's gotten. So I guess we can learn from both of them. There will be times where we'll be fearful, but don't let the fear get the best of us. Don't let the fear keep us from doing what God has called us to do, because God has had you wherever you are. He has had you there for a reason, and that reason is to glorify him and obey his word and his commandments and be a shining light to the rest of the people. Can you imagine if Obadiah was not the governor? How would those prophets get spared? God would have to use some kind of other way, or they would not get spared at all. God uses Obadiah to set up a meeting between Ahab and Elijah. What if Obadiah did not want to do that, and what if he refused to do that? How would they get together? God has you and me down here for a specific purpose, to do a specific thing that he wants. Yes, he can get somebody else, but he wants you to do it. That's your assignment. And that assignment should not be given to somebody else who's willing to do it when you have the opportunity to do it. And so I want to encourage you to be a prophet of courage, be a man of courage, be a woman of courage, be a child of courage, and do God's will. He will bless you in a man. Be part of his master plan. Be a willing vessel. Well, I hope this lesson has been helpful to you. It's been a tremendous blessing to me. I learned so much about Obadiah. We're going to be, if you're in a foreign place, an ungodly place, do your very best. Shine. And even the evil will recognize your goodness. Even the evil will recognize your trustworthiness. Even the evil will want you behind them. You don't have to go to work and play all these games and this gossip and this manipulation to get ahead. No, do a good job. Trust the Lord and see how God will elevate you. And once he's elevating you, be willing to do the task at hand that he's given you. Be able to do acts of courage for the Lord. God bless you. We will talk again next week with the next Sunday school lesson. I've enjoyed it. I want you to have a great Sunday, a great Sunday school. I love you much. I love you even more. Have a good day.